the information we get, with our health and well-being, as well with our mind, our spirit, and our bodies. Today, I want to continue talking a little bit about Kenneth Burke and dramatism and how we can spend some time analyzing the information we are receiving. We left off on this topic last week, and this week we're going to move along, if you will, with about analyzing information, what we're getting, how we are receiving it, and how we can make better choices with the information we get, either from a long-term or a short-term proposal. So again, my name is Dr. Rebecca Lee McCarthy. My degree is in comparative studies, so that's sociology, philosophy, and communication studies along with rhetoric. I'm also a professional actress, and if you go to my webpage, which is, I think, on the information I have already sent out, but www.rebeccamccarthy.com. So dramatism is this way in which we analyze information. And if you're in school and you're introduced to Kenneth Burke, you're probably going to analyze something like, a play or a text or some kind of literary type of format. But you can also use this in real life. A lot of things that we learn in school, we often think to ourselves, well, it doesn't necessarily count in real life, but it does. When you take that English 101 and 102 class, you are being given skills not only to write a paper, but also to analyze different situations that you come about in life. Today, we're going to look at COVID-19, and we're going to look specifically at what happened over the last 4 days. I mean, it's been pretty exciting. President Trump, we found out, along with several people who work with President Trump, came down with COVID-19. And many of us through the weekend, whether we like or approve of President Trump or not, he is our president. So a lot of us have been keeping tabs on the information that we're receiving. And a lot of the information that we're receiving seems to be a little confusing. So I want to look at how we can view what happened over the last 4 days using this technique of dramatism. And of course, dear Harpo wants to say hello and actually wants to exit. Sorry about that. So when we look at dramatism, we're looking at a few things. First of all, the act, what was done. Next is the scene, where it was taking place. And also the scene encompasses a lot of extra stuff like context of the case, the time period, where it's taking place. There's wide, and then of course there's narrow, different scenes, and we'll look at that this week. Agency, how it was accomplished. So what actions did we take to accomplish something? Purpose, what was our motivation? Why did we decide to do what we did, or why did other people decide to do what they did? And the agents involved. So who are the people involved? And all of these things happen on multiple levels, right? So if I'm, for example, trying to look at something like the president coming down with COVID, I'm an agent, but I'm analyzing the situation. So I'm not part of the situation. So my role as an agent or an actor, if you will, is going to be a lot different than President Trump's role versus his campaign role. The people who work in his campaign versus the people who work for Biden and is in Biden's campaign. And then, of course, we have the American people, we have the doctors involved, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of actors. And as we talked about last week regarding all reality is perception, our perception changes with the actor, with the scene, with the context, with the purpose, and so on and so forth. Because all reality is really just our perception of how we are perceiving the information we are getting, it's really important to be able to find yourself in a position that you can analyze everybody's different point of view. And the reason we need to do this is it helps us get a little bit closer to the truth, or at least understanding motivations. So let's start this off, shall we? Act, what was done? Okay, so the act I am looking at today is President Trump and, of course, many of the people who work with him getting the coronavirus. So that's in general what the act is, and that's what we're going to be analyzing. And of course, there's many different agents involved. We have the president and the first lady themselves, of course, all the other people who got COVID, the campaign staff, the doctors, and then, of course, there's the American people. And we should add in Biden and Biden's camp, because the scene that we're dealing with, or part of the scene, is during an election campaign. And we're less than a month away now from that particular election. So the scene is complicated because the scene needs to look at the time period, the place that things are happening, as well as the context, what overall influences are going on in that scene. Scenes have wide and narrow kind of perspectives. From a wide perspective, we can look at coronavirus in the world. As of today, it was reported that 10% of the world population, or 35.5 million people, have come down with COVID. And likewise, 1.04 million deaths have occurred. So this is a wide scope because we're looking at the world as a whole. And then it gets a little narrower as we narrow in on the scene. So the next scope of this scene is, of course, what's happening here in the United States with COVID. Right now, we have 7 million people in the United States that are infected, and COVID-19 has killed 210,000 people. So that gives us a little bit more narrow of a scope. But if we compare those numbers with the world scope numbers, then we realize that the United States has a big chunk, a huge, huge chunk of cases that is being manifested here in the United States. So that tells us a little bit about the scene, especially if we're comparing the United States to the world and the world's numbers. Next, we're going to continue to narrow that scope of our scene of the president getting COVID. And now let's look at the White House. And one of the things we have here is the event at the Rose Garden in which President Trump was nominating the next Supreme Court justice. And we do know from that particular scene, and I'm just looking at my notes to make sure I have it all, that several people who attended that particular event ended up coming down with the coronavirus. And if we look at that event, you had chairs that were very close next to each other. Nobody really was wearing any masks. So there wasn't social distancing. There wasn't the use of masks. And if you looked at that particular event, it looks like an event before the coronavirus ever hit the United States. So the coronavirus, as part of this scene, has been here in the United States for approximately 8 months. So we've been dealing with this for 8 months as the scale has largened. So when we look at what happened in the Rose Garden, we have to compare that to the rest of the scene as well. The other part of the scenes that we look at from a narrow point of view is not only that Trump got infected, but 13 people from that Rose Garden experience got infected when the nomination for Amy Barrett, I'm tripping over my words today, was nominated by President Trump. So now we have a good idea of the scene and what happened. We have an event and somebody there. We don't know who's had it, who spread it, because we do understand that contact tracing is being limited in this particular case. So we really are kind of left in the mystery as to how the coronavirus showed up at the Rose Garden itself. It was probably somebody who was asymptomatic, who did not have, for example, a temperature, and they were able to attend the event. Now, Trump gets sick. The next part of the scene that we understand is that at some point in time, and we're not absolutely certain on this because the information has been contradictory, but at some point in time, Trump was infected by the coronavirus and tested positive. We were informed that, and we knew that Trump was at the White House. And then all of a sudden, the scene even narrowed more when Trump had to be moved from the White House to a hospital. So then he moves to the Walter Reed Medical Center, and this narrows our scene again. And it also brings into play a lot more players, a lot more agents, actors who are now involved with this particular scenario. So we were told that it was precautionary measures that the president was taken to Walter Reed. So now we're in the Walter Reed situation, and we have to look at what is the motivation of information here. We know a few things. When the president came down with a positive test of COVID-19, we know that we were not told entirely the truth. First, we are told that another member of his staff gets it, Hope, and then it was suggested that they didn't want to let that information out. And then we found out that President Trump had it, that the First Lady had it, and so on and so forth. So it was very clear that the White House was going to have a hard time to hide this information, or at least not talk about this information, which is a way of hiding information. Once he gets to Walter Reed, all chaos breaks loose. And that's what we saw this weekend. What was interesting is, of course, the information that was being released by the White House compared to the information that was being released by the doctors at the hospital, compared to what we were seeing Trump was doing. Now, this, of course, all goes to action or agency. Okay, so the purpose of the overall scene, I think, is to control the message of the coronavirus and to control the message of President Trump getting the coronavirus. And this is complicated stuff because at first, again, information was mostly hidden. Next, we have inconsistent information about his health, his well-being, and then we have an attempt to regain control of the situation. So how was this done? What was the purpose? The purpose is to regain the control of this information. But the agency, what we're going to do in order to control that information is we're going to take a series of steps. One, a video on Saturday night of Trump showing Trump working from Walter Reed. And there's a piece of paper in front of him, and he's signing his name on something, of course, before he speaks to us. But then Twitter went off showing pictures of that piece of paper at the hospital, and there's nothing on that piece of paper besides Trump's signature. So unfortunately, they were not able to control the scene as much as they would have liked to because of this small error. Now, if this was on stage, you would have a stage manager saying, you can't have that person sign a blank piece of paper. There would be, an attempt to find a piece of paper that looks like there's information on it, and it looks like there's a place to date and sign it. But it is I'm suspecting that the idea was created quickly, and there was very little time to set the scene, so to speak, so you could control the message that was coming out. Once Twitter went crazy and the news about the fact that President Trump was just signing a blank piece of paper, that he looked very pale, so he didn't have his signature makeup on, and that it looked like he was controlling or trying to hold himself up by the desk, they realized that they needed to find a different way to control the situation and the information coming out. So that's when we saw that Trump got into the sealed car and went out and waved to his good wishers and his followers. And of course, this backfired on the campaign as well, because people started to talk about how cars like that for the president is sealed in such a way to protect the president from viruses or other types of pollutants, specifically those having to do with war, for example, from getting into the car. So that car was so sealed and there were so many people in there. The ultimate question arose, why would President Trump put other people in danger when he already knows that he has the virus? And we already know that masks are not 100%. And we all know that people were kept in close quarters in a vehicle that is not going to have air coming into it the same way as windows being rolled down. So that backfired as well. And of course, we saw this on Twitter, and we saw this in several places on the news, doctors coming out saying that it was irresponsible. And we also had Secret Service people coming out and saying that this is a problem. So the information was not able to be controlled. Again, of course, the control in this particular situation, quite simply, is this. How can we make it look like this is not a bad situation for the president? Show that the president is fit, show that he's got this, show that he is going to survive, that he is a fighter, that he is strong. The coronavirus can't get him. So that's the message that they're trying to bring out, especially in consideration of the larger scene, which includes a campaign coming up. Now, where does Biden come in to this whole entire scene that we are analyzing? Well, we do know that Biden tested negative for COVID, and he was tested at least 3, probably 4 times now. And he came out with a message of compassion for the president. And indeed, this is what we were seeing on social media. There was a lot of people who said, oh, we just want President Trump to die. But there was a corresponding message coming from liberals and also from conservatives that we need to approach this thing with compassion. Indeed, that's the camp I fell in, right? I said very specifically that I don't necessarily agree with Trump's politics, but I wouldn't wish the coronavirus on anyone, that everybody deserves our compassion. So we are trying to go down a road of understanding through a couple different situations. 1, misinformation or contrary information. 2, the visual representation of the Trump administration trying to control the message with the coronavirus and failing. Because they did fail several times. These little mistakes that I am pointing out really become big road signs for people who are going to be analyzing. And so they had to change the message again. It was really important to change the message again. And we saw this. I saw it yesterday, and I'm coming to the quote right now. And what we saw was an attempt by the communication director of the Trump campaign. And she came out and she said, he has experience as commander in chief. He has experience as a businessman. He has experience now of fighting the coronavirus as an individual. Those firsthand experiences, Joe Biden, he doesn't have those. So now they're trying to make it look like the president is a hero, almost as if he intentionally gave himself the coronavirus so that he can be more identifiable, be able to identify better, if you will, with other people who have struggled with the coronavirus. And then, of course, we find this out later that this is indeed the message that they're going to settle on when Trump returns to the White House from the hospital and says, see, no problem. I totally got this. Don't let the coronavirus control you. So the purpose of doing an analysis like this is to be able to see much better how people are positioning themselves in a particular scene, and to be able to see how that scene or the actors involved or the motivation and so on and so forth impacts the message being sent to us. So one of the things that we can come away with, and of course we see this on the news, is this understanding that there had to be a lot of repositioning in order to keep going on and keep justifying Trump's overall message about the coronavirus, which we all know, because he has admitted to, that although he realizes that it's a dangerous virus, that ultimately he wants to be upbeat about it. And of course, that's what he told Bob Woodward in a interview. And then we have all heard that soundbite by now. So in order to maintain that message and rather not look like a Chicken Little, if you will, anecdote in which we say the sky is falling, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. And then when the sky actually does fall, nobody believes him. He has to re-wrangle the message as well as his campaign team in order to look like there is some kind of through line that makes sense. But when you see this type of repositioning in general, and I don't care if it comes from President Trump and his political team, or if it comes from Biden and their political team, it doesn't matter. This happens in politics all the time, but it's up to us, the people who vote, to keep track of this information so we don't necessarily react to the information, but we're able to sit down. We become the observer, which of course is the theme of all of these podcasts, to become actively aware of how we are being manipulated by information. And again, the manipulation happens on all sides. So it's up to us as the voters to be more aware of how we're being manipulated, why we're being manipulated, and how the message is being transmitted to all of us. And with that said, let's have our meditation. I have Elf Meditation here by Kevin MacLeod, again over at Impotech. And I want you to get yourself comfortable. Please take a seat and close your eyes. You can sit, you may lay down. If you're in a car, pull over or listen to this portion a little bit later. And take a couple deep breaths. We meditate after these short discussions, mostly because we want to understand the ideas that we are exploring at a deeper and more personal level. How do these ideas, these concepts, these approaches resonate with us personally? And how, ultimately, can we work to bring in these ideas and incorporate them in our own lives so we are more informed, we are more aligned with the world we are living in, we are more aligned with ourselves, our values, our thoughts, and we have some agency. We have some control to decide specifically how we're going to act or react when we live in a world that mostly wants us to react without thinking. How can we reverse that tendency? Take a few more deep breaths. Bring that breath all the way down into the root of your body. And exhale out anything that is no longer serving you in this world, in this life, in your everyday activities. When you breathe in for a count of 5 or 6 and imagine a beautiful white light filling your body with health, awareness, alignment. And when you exhale for a count of 6 to 7, exhale out everything that no longer serves you, but give it a color such as brown, so that you can better identify with those things that aren't working for you anymore. Life is a process, and that process is ever changing, ever developing, evolving. Now we're going to go through a series of questions. to help you align yourself with the day and the information that you receive throughout the day. Ask yourself these questions silently. Don't try to control the answer. You may receive words, images, sensations, or feelings. Just allow those things to come to you and then let them go. Who am I? Who am I? Allow any feelings or sensations to come to you and then release them. What do I want? What is my deepest desire? What is my purpose? How can I serve myself and others to help create a better world? What is my purpose? And finally, what am I grateful for? What are the things in my life that I can rejoice in? What am I grateful for? Now release all those questions and the answers and just breathe. You may use the mantra "so hum," or you can just focus on your breathing. Regardless if you have any thoughts or sensations, sounds in your environment, just observe that they exist without getting involved. And then go back to focusing on your breath or your mantra, "so hum." Let's just focus for a moment in silence. Now, release the mantra and the focus on your breath and just relax in awareness. I'm going to leave us with a few intentions to help us get through the day. I have a joyful, energetic body. I have a joyful, energetic body. A loving and compassionate heart. I have a reflective and alert mind. I have a reflective and alert mind. I am lightness of being. I would like to thank the Chopra Institute for their training and their help on meditation. And I would like to thank all of you for being present to today's podcast. As always, I say aloha and mahalo, and of course, namaste. May your day be an enlightened one, filled with revelations, understanding, and insights. Take care, and until tomorrow at 9 a.m. Mountain Time, this has been Alignment with Rebecca.